Ma'am, you can start now.
Hello. Yeah, are there any more people like will be joining more, or should I start now?
Yes, ma'am, you can start.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So hello everyone. This is Priyanka Upreti this side. I'll introduce myself first. I did my BSc Agriculture from Govind Vallabh Pant University of Agriculture and Technology, Pantnagar. And then after that, I did my Masters in Agriculture Economics from Indian Agriculture Research Institute. And then I was doing my PhD from there itself. But then in my third year, I got selected for RBI. So now I'm working as manager in Department of Economic and Policy Research in RBI. So today I'll be going to talk about agriculture economics, some concepts related to agriculture economics, which will be useful for your JRF preparation. Just to start with, what is economics? The term economics was actually, it was taken from one Greek word named oikonomikas, and which actually means household management. So since a particular household has to manage so many things, like so many decisions related to consumer behavior, that comes that a household comprises all of that. That's why the literal meaning of this word is actually household management. And if we talk if we say, like, if we go back and where this economics and all started, so the first school of thought which emerged was classical economics, and the father of economics, and Adam Smith was said to be the father of economics. But then later, as the time passed, during the time of the Great Recession, during the time of 1930s, that time a different school of thought emerged from classical to Keynesian economics. So that's why, because there was a kind of major shift in the thinking. So now the father of modern economics is John Maynard Keynes. He was attributed as father of modern economics. So if in the exam they simply ask who is father of economics, then I think Adam Smith will be the appropriate answer. And if they are saying particularly who is the father of modern economics, then you should choose John Maynard Keynes. So now, there are so many definitions of economics. First, there is some wealth definition who is associated with Adam Smith. Then there is welfare definition, which is associated with Alfred Marshall. Then came the growth definition by J.M. Keynes, and then there is one scarcity definition by Lionel Robbins. And I find actually this scarcity definition as the most appropriate one. So just to start with, the economics is actually, it is a science of scarcity or science of choice. Economics is a science which studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative uses. So there are various endless wants of a human, and so there are three things. One is there are unlimited wants. The second one is we have very scarce means to fulfill them, and the third one is because we have scarce means, we have to allocate those means to our unlimited ends. We have to prioritize that. So the decisions related to all these things that comes under economics. So that in a wholesome manner, all these things are called. They all come under the subject of economics. So we can divide this economics into two parts: microeconomics and macroeconomics. Whenever we study individual decision making. Whenever we study the behavior of individual decision making units like consumers, resource owners, business firms, they come they are termed under they come under microeconomics. And whenever we study these concepts in an aggregate manner, like whenever we study about national income, aggregate output, total employment, general level of prices, so these all come under the branch of macroeconomics. Okay, so basically we are studying the same things under both these streams. Under both these streams, people face with the same thing. We have unlimited wants, we have limited resources to fulfill them, and how to prioritize our wants and how to allocate those needs to our wants. So we study all these things only in economics, only because of the level, micro level it is called microeconomics, and the macro level it is macroeconomics. So in microeconomics, there are various concepts like theory of demand, theory of production, theories of distribution. Like we know the rent to land, wages to labor, interest to capital, the profits to entrepreneur, how to determine all of this. This comes under theories of distribution and the welfare economics. And whereas under my macroeconomics, we study different policies at the macro level, like monetary policies by RBI, fiscal policies by government, industrial, trade, to solve the major economic problems like poverty, unemployment, inflation, inequality, the macro level things. So this was just to introduce to the subject of economics, and since we are not here to study the economics per se as a subject, so here we'll be focusing mainly towards the JRF examination. So now I'll tell you some important concepts which are important from the exam point of view. So the first thing is utility. Utility is want satisfying power of a commodity. Any like whichever commodity, but whichever is like satisfying our wants, we say that commodity is of utility to us. So that's simply a utility. So there is one law economics known as law of diminishing marginal utility. It says that the additional benefit which a person derives from a given increase of his stock of a thing that diminishes with every increase in stock that he already has. So this is the basic behavior, basic human behavior. We all know that if we are hungry and we are eating food, so from the first bite we will derive the maximum utility. But as soon as like we will keep on taking, like subsequently we will take on the different bites, but subsequently it will decrease. The utility which will derive from the last unit will be very less as compared to the first unit. So that is a normal human behavior. So this is known as law of diminishing marginal utility. Now, what is marginal utility? This is change in total utility resulting from a unit change in consumption of a commodity per unit of time. It's simply whatever additional utility which we are getting from an additional unit of a commodity. But from one unit change in the commodity, how much additional utility we are getting, that is termed as marginal utility. And if we see the formula, it is change in total utility derived by change in quantity demanded. Next law is law of equimarginal utility. It says that consumer distributes his money income in such a way that utility derived from the last rupee spent on each good is equal. Okay, so this is a law. This is just a law. So I'm not going into much detail. So just I'll cover the brief things. So both of these laws, they are based on cardinal measurement of utility, and they were given by Alfred Marshall. Here, cardinal means that both of these laws says that the utility can be measured in terms of money. So that's why it is known as cardinal measurement of utility. Both these laws are based on cardinal measurement, means utility can be measured in terms of money. So according to this, in exam they may ask when a consumer will reach equilibrium. So whenever the additional utility which we are getting from additional consumption of a good, that is marginal utility, that becomes equal to the price of commodity. So that point is known as consumer's equilibrium in case of one commodity. And for two commodity purchase, This is the condition, okay? The marginal utility of X, suppose there are two commodities, X and Y. So marginal utility of X divided by its price, that should be equal to marginal utility of Y divided by its price. And that both of these should be equal to marginal utility of money. So this is the equilibrium condition for two commodity case. Now, what is demand actually? How do we define the demand? Demand is nothing but the desire, willingness, and ability to pay for a commodity is termed as demand. Okay, if we have only desire for a commodity, we will not say that this is a demand. They should be backed by the purchasing power also. So the desire and ability to pay for a commodity is termed as demand. And the law of demand, we all know that the demand varies inversely with the price. This is the well-known law of demand. And then, as I told, the different concepts related to utility. One was cardinal measurement. The another one is ordinal measurement. The ordinal measurement of utility says that we can't measure utility in terms of money. It says that it's not possible. We can only, the ordinal measurement says that we can only rank the utilities of different goods, okay? We can say that utility of X, suppose there are two goods, X and Y. So we can say that utility of X is more than utility of Y, but we cannot say by how much it is more than Y, how much it is more than that. We cannot assign any, quantitative measurement. We can only rank different goods according to the, in terms of utility. So under the ordinal measurement of utility concept, there is one concept that is known as indifference curve. Indifference curve is all combination of two goods which gives equal satisfaction to consumer. It is also known as iso-utility curve. It was given by Hicks and Allen, and it is convex to origin. So this is nothing but if you will take any two goods X and Y, and if we plot them like X on the good X on X-axis and good Y on Y-axis, the like quantities of these two goods, and whenever you and when you will join the points which gives equal satisfaction to consumer, the combination of these two goods, that will be your indifference curve. So I don't know you will be able to get it now or not because I'm not showing it graphically. So just understand the concept, because for the exam point of view, I think they will ask only what is indifference. They can ask, I don't know. So I'll not go in much detail because otherwise you will be confused. So now there is one principle of diminishing marginal rate of substitution. MRS, we call it MRS of X for Y. So it says that this marginal rate of substitution of X for Y, it diminishes as more and more of good X is substituted for good Y. It says that suppose there are two goods, okay, X and Y, and they can be substituted with each other. So if we are increasing the quantity of good X, we are basically, if we are substituting good X, we are increasing good X and we are decreasing the quantity of good Y in manner that gives us same level of utility, okay? So it says that rate of substitution, actually marginal rate of substitution, it diminishes as more and more of good X is substituted for good Y. So by formula, it can be written as MRS of X for Y will be delta Y by delta X. Here delta Y is replaced good. Delta X is added good. So it's replaced good. The change in the quantity of replaced good divided by change in the quantity of added good. It should be equal to the marginal utility of X divided by marginal utility of Y. Okay, this is the formula. Now this indifference curve, which I just told you just before this MRS, for perfect substitutes. In case of perfect substitutes, this curve is a straight line. Okay, just straight line. And for perfect complements, it used to be L-shaped or right angle, we can say. So just remember these concepts. Like it will take more time if I'll explain you what are the perfect substitutes. And perfect substitutes are like which can be perfectly substituted. Okay, like if good X and good Y, if they are perfect substitutes, if good X can completely replace good Y. The examples of perfect substitutes can be the tea and coffee, although they are not that perfect, but we can say, okay, the tea and coffee since both satisfy our what to say caffeine, the urge for caffeine. So the tea and coffee, we can say that they are perfect substitutes. And a perfect complements can be one vehicle and one driver. Okay, without driver, the vehicle is of no use. So both needs each other. So they are the example of perfect complements. So in case of perfect complements, the indifference curve is L-shaped, and for perfect substitutes, it is straight line. And why this is that? Is I think I should that will be very lengthy and that will not be required for you as of now. So just remember, for perfect substitutes, it's straight line. For perfect complements, it is L-shaped. Now, another concept is price line or budget line. This line shows all combination of two goods that a consumer can buy by spending all his money income on these two goods at given prices. Okay. So, so this is nothing but the combination of two goods that consumer can buy with if he spend all his money income on these two goods. Okay, given at given prices at given the prices at that time. So that is price line. And the consumer's equilibrium. But what will be the condition for consumer's equilibrium is whenever this indifference curve, it is tangent to budget line. Whenever it will be tangent to budget line, or we can say the slope, here should be or, okay, or the slope of these two are equal. Whenever the slope of indifference curve and the budget line will be equal, or we can say in other terms, whenever indifference curve is tangent to the budget line, that point will be the consumer's equilibrium. And mathematically, we can write it as MRS of X or Y is equal to price of X divided by price of Y. It is nothing but the same thing which I told you earlier. See, here MRS of X for Y can be written as marginal utility of X divided by marginal utility of Y. So whenever marginal utility of X divided by marginal utility of Y, it will be equal to the inverse price ratio of these goods. That is the point of consumer's equilibrium. Okay, we can ask this. I think they may ask. I don't know, but let's remember this condition. Now, another concept in economics is angel curve. The angel curve is the relationship between level of income and quantity purchase of a particular commodity. Okay, in one axis, it will be level of the income, and the y-axis, suppose it will be quantity. I think income will be on the y-axis and quantity purchase of a particular commodity will be the x-axis. So the relationship between income and quantity purchase is your angel curve. For normal goods, it will be upward sloping because just the simple common sense, right? That whenever your income will increase, you will demand more of a commodity. So for normal goods, okay. So for normal goods, it will be upward sloping, and for inferior goods, it will be backward bending. Because if your income increases, you will not go for the inferior goods, right? You will go for the more quality goods. So that's why the angel curve for inferior goods is backward bending. For normal goods, is upward sloping, and its slope increases for necessities. For necessary goods, okay, like the necessary goods of food and all, for them its slope increases. And for luxury goods can be any other thing like the car and all these things. The angel curve for them, the slope of that decreases with increase in the income. So just remember this relation. Now, the law of demand, just I told, that indicates only direction of change in the quantity demanded. But there is another concept known as elasticity of demand, which tells how much or to what extent quantity demand will change with respect to change in the price. Okay, the law of demand simply says that quantity demanded and price are inversely proportional. It doesn't tell by how much or to what extent our quantity demanded will change with response to the change in price of a good. Okay. So that concept is known as elasticity of demand. This is developed by Alfred Marshall. So the elasticity is nothing but the proportional or percentage change in quantity demanded in response to proportional or percentage change in price of a commodity. Ceteris paribus means everything else is being equal. So elasticity, you just think, elastic means like how much we can stretch. So, how much or by how much quantity demanded by anyone is changing whenever there is a change in the price of a commodity. That simply, in simple terms, that is known as price elasticity of demand. And if we if we see the formula, it is delta Q means change in quantity demanded divided by delta P, that is change in the price, multiplied by price of a good divided by this Q is quantity demanded of a commodity. So this is the elasticity formula. And whenever this price elasticity is more than one, we say it is that good is having elastic demand. Whenever it is less than one, we say it is inelastic. Whenever it is equal to one, means unitary elastic demand. And when elasticity is zero, we say perfectly inelastic. And when elasticity is infinite, we say it is perfectly elastic. So now coming to some other concepts like markets. There are different type of markets. So the first one, so here just I have classified them according to their properties. So the first one is perfect competitive market. In perfect competitive market, there used to be a large number of firms. The firms will be very large, the product will be homogeneous, and the elasticity of demand of individual firm will be infinite. There will be no control over the price, and there will be free entry. Any firm can enter in the market. There will be no restriction for them, and the price will be given. Okay, here the firms cannot exercise their control over the price. They are price takers. Price will be already determined in the market, and they will just accept that price and they will sell their goods at that price. So that kind of market is known as perfect competition. But then we know that there are not any perfect. There is in reality there is not perfect competition in the market. So they are according to the different degrees of imperfect competition. There are different type of market. So at the extreme, so this is like a continuum. At one end there is perfect competition where everything perfect, and another end it is imperfect. So the monopoly is another extreme. In monopoly, there used to be only one firm. Mono means one, poly means seller. Okay, monopoly means one seller, and the product will be unique product because without close substitutes, because since there is only one seller, so only there will be unique product. There will be no any substitutes for that product. The price elasticity of demand will be very small. The degree of control over the price will be very large. Since only one seller is there, so the price control is very large, and there will be strong barriers to entry. Another market is monopolistic competition. So here there are large number of firms. There will be differentiated products, but they will be close substitutes. And then the price demand will be large, price elasticity of demand. It will be between these two, okay, not very infinite, not very large, not very small, but large to some extent. Then there will be some degree of control over the price, and there will be free entry. So I'm not going to explain this in detail because it will take a lot of time to me, because this for JRF exam. I think this much detail they will not ask in the exam. And since I think the students are from horticulture and forestry background, so unless one is preparing particularly for the social science, I don't think this much detail will be required. But just to understand, just remember in monopoly there will be one seller, as the name suggests. Then another thing is pure oligopoly. Here there will be few number of firms, homogeneous product, small price elasticity of demand. There will be some degree of control over the price, and there will be limited entry. And the another one is differentiated oligopoly with few firms, but only difference is that here the nature of product will be differentiated. So these are the different type of markets which we study in economics. There are other things also. Duopoly. In duopoly, as the name suggests, there will be two sellers. Monopoly, one seller. Duopoly, two sellers. One thing is monopsony also. Monopsony means mono means seller and sony means buyer. In monopsony, there will be one buyer. So now just a few other concepts, like they can ask for food grains. what is the nature of elasticity of demand, price elasticity of demand. So they are actually relatively less elastic, or you can say inelastic, because these are necessities, okay? Because nobody can live like hungry, no? Well, like no matter how much price fluctuations in price will be there, our demand for the food will be constant. So means we can shift from the high quality grains to low quality grains and all, but uh, but the demand will be whatever, it will be less elastic. So the nature of demand for the food grains for necessary goods will be less elastic, or we can say inelastic. Now, the price elasticities are generally lower for higher income classes than that for lower income classes, obviously, because the higher income classes, they have higher income. So for them, they can, switch over to, they have control, they have income. So for them, price elasticity will be lower. They will not change their quantity demanded much according to change in the price, because they are higher in earning individuals. But the lower income class who have limited income in their hand, with this, whenever like when it will be changing the price according to that, they